This is a gathering of these intellectual young people, and yet they have invited an old man of 90 years old to be your speaker. And therefore, I'll try to rewind my age to give it due with you and speak in your own language of your time. We always talk about that the world is moving very fast, particularly the development in science and technology, especially information technology, is developing at a very fast rate. And all of us are part of that century and that part of that civilization. And therefore, modern societies have become information societies. Now, in every individual, we have mobile. In other words, you are holding the whole world in your hand. And that is the kind of society in which we live. Every citizen are equally interested to get the latest information, not only of the country, but the whole world. But this information should be comprehensive, accurate, and as far as fair. Now in this situation, the idea of right to information has become paramount in our society. But we should remember that the fundamental rights provided in the Constitution of India and also constitutions of democratic world, nothing has been given without check. In other words, no right is untrammeled. The restriction. All rights are subjected to a certain code of conduct. And when limit has to be imposed on this freedom of information and speech. There are very important restrictions in our Constitution, and that is security, decency, and morality. Though it is the freedom of press, freedom of expression, there are areas where we cannot go beyond the freedom. And that is the code which had laid down in our Constitution. We are all living in democracy. And as we know, democracy entails the balancing of rights and due privileges with reference to your duties and responsibilities. In democracy, we are free, no doubt, but our privileges, our rights have to be matched with our obligation, with our responsibility. And that is the beauty of the fundamental rights provided in the Constitution of India. In a totalitarian setup, the people and the press are regulated by whom? By government. Whatever you should do, whatever you should not do, all these are regulated by the government. Whereas in democracy, it has to be regulated by society, and therefore restriction to this have to emanate from the society itself. It is not imposed, but it is inbuilt in society to regulate and restrain which we have to exercise in the freedom. That's the one thing. Now freedom of expression is, you said, is also dangerous. When it goes beyond, I think it becomes dangerous. Now, Lamartine, one judge said, when the press is the echo of the sages or wise men, echo of the sages or wise men and reformers, then press works very well. But when it is the echo of turbulent cynics, then it merely feeds political excitement. I think that is the condition in which our press have to work. Another thing is the thorny relationship between press and government has been debated, discussed, deliberated on all occasions, and various commentaries were made by different commentators and writers. But what is important today is the relationship between newspaper and the people. Why I'm saying this, very often we focus on emotional or like that news. But if newspaper focus its attention on the welfare of the common man, to highlight the problem of people instead of the speeches of politicians, but if you focus that problem of the people, common man, then your press will grow very popular. But if you focus only on political personalities, it confines only to that. But when people feel that their interests are also highlighted, their difficulties are also highlighted, then the press will become very important and popular. I think people will not be afraid of your press. They'll only admire your functioning. Though your theme is, who is not afraid of the press? But I'm not afraid. Why? Because the press, when it delivers justice, when it can really speak out on behalf of the downtrodden, why should we be afraid of the press? Rather, we should admire the press. I don't know why you have given the theme. Who is not afraid of the press? I don't know. I can't understand. I think you don't create that kind of fear psychosis in the minds of the people. You only enlighten, educate. But how can you say that who is not afraid of the press? I don't understand. May I take this opportunity to tell you, now lots of advertisement by whom? Rich people, industrialists, government. And this has resulted in brainwashing. Everything is painted in a very positive aspect. They think it's a dreamland, but they say this is reality. And everything is exaggerated in advertisement. And people accept it. So it tends to brainwash the people, making people to believe that in this world, only rich people, industrialists live. So he's poor, but because of the brainwashing, he believes that only Western people are civilized, only rich people are civilized. I think this trend also has to be arrested. It is my firm appeal to you that you should be the echo of sages, wise men, and reformers, rather than the echo of the Tertullian scientists. That is about the press. But this is a very rare opportunity for all men like me to interact with the enlightened press fraternity in this state. I have many things to speak up. And as an old man, I don't represent any group. I represent myself. And therefore my expression, if there's any, they should only criticize me. They should not blame anybody. That's one. Secondly, I want to speak only truth. Nothing but truth according to my assessment. And I want to share my vision of Nagaland. Today we are living in a very confused society. People are in darkness. Whether it is government, whether it is underground, whether it is churches in Nagaland, I think nobody can say that we are going to that direction. No one can say. And what is the special, peculiar features of Nagaland? Number one, though we talk about 21st century, we talk about scientific, technological development, we talk about advancement, digital age, and so on and so forth. But our people are too much obsessed to the past. I have been telling on several occasions to young people that there are millions and millions of yesterdays have already gone by. And it will continue to go. Millions and millions of tomorrows also will go, vanish. And they'll never come back because they merge with eternity. But one is always with you, and that is today. Today is a permanent friend. Today is a permanent asset for us. And today is the most important day for us to perform. Past, yes. If today, if you do well, then yesterday's records will be good. If you do good today, tomorrow will be brighter. And that is the way that the world moves. That is the way society grows. But today in Nagaland, very unfortunately, people talk only about the past. What is history? But you know that history, yes, we learn, is a reference. But today we are not living in reference. We have to create new history. But we are lacking in creating new history by the younger generation today. And what are the obstacles? One, the other day I have been telling our community that Nagas are rearing three animals. A monkey, which is very primitive. Secondly, we are also rearing another animal which is called tongi, very conservative. very conservative. And another animal were tiger, tigers. These three Nagas have not been able to kill even today. That is the reason why we are not moving forward, because of egg and donkey. We have not been able to restore peace because of tiger being reared in our heart, in our society, and everywhere. So unless and until we kill these three animals, then Nagaland will remain as we are today. And therefore, I call upon the press community, fraternity, to tell our people that we are living not in 19th century, not in 20th century, but we are living in the 21st century, and we are preparing for 22nd century. I think Nagas should also have forward-looking attitude, forward-looking thinking, vision. Another thing is, we always talk about politics as if politics is everything for us. And by talking politics, we have completely neglected economic development. We have completely neglected social reformation. We have completely neglected our cultural enlightenment. And what kind of situation in which we are living today, all of us are aware of it. But since we are living in that atmosphere, we are not feeling. It has become part of us. And why not? We escape from this dangerous trend, the climate prevailing in Nagaland. That's why. People talk about identities. And there's different interpretation of identities. But I personally feel that Nagas have got two identities. One is Naga identity and the other is Christian identity. What Naga identity manifests? What are those elements contained in this Naga identity? Honesty, bravery, courage, and endurance. Even though the situation was so bad in 56, no one ran away from Nagaland. No refugee. Nagas could endure that kind of action. And that is our identity. And what is this Christian identity? Love, peace, goodwill, and harmony. So Nagas have got beautiful, assets. But today people would like to say, this is Naga identity. No. Naga identity we have already have with us. You don't require any definition, new definition of Naga identity. We can tell Naga identity, honesty is our identity. Courage, bravery, endurance is our purpose. Nagas believe in peace, in love, harmony. Because the angel of the Lord, when they appeared during Christmas, I bring you good tidings of great joy. And what is that joy? Peace on earth and goodwill among men. These two are our identities. Now we have been talking to you for so many years about politics. And I believe God has provided an opportunity this time But because of our negative approach to everything, we look everything from jaundiced eyes. I don't know. We talk so much of unity, but we are dividing, redividing, that is. We talk so much of this peace, but killing each other, that is. So this negativism had to give way to positivism. Now, after so many years of negotiation for political solution, I think the leaders of the underground, I think we should also be grateful to them. Even though you are subjected to only one idea, during these long years of negotiation, you are exposed to modern civilization. They have seen the contemporary realities in politics, in economics, and everything in life. In their own wisdom and with their political foresight, they also have accepted the reality of the world, the reality of Indian society, the reality of Naga society. And they have also recognized the unique position of India in geopolitical international affairs. So they have agreed to sign two agreements known as Framework Agreement of 3rd August 2015 between NSCN, IM and Government of India in the presence of the Prime Minister of India, Home Minister was there. And I was carefully reading the statement of Prime Minister on that day. What did he say? I welcome the leaders of the underground for joining the mainstream of Indian polity. What does it mean by Indian polity? That means we are part and parcel of this great nation. Our system had to be regulated according to the Constitution of India. The laws of the land have to be our law. And there, in even agreed position, which they have signed on 17 November 2017, they have not mentioned neither sovereignty nor integration. We don't see this one in both agreements. Why? They have realized, recognized the contemporary political realities. And I believe both the leaders of the underground and Government of India have drawn up this agreement in the best interest of the people of Nagaland and Government of India. But unfortunately, lots of interpretations are given. But as a public, as a people, even though they have not consulted us, we believe that they have done the very best for the people of Nagaland and for their future. Why not? We also explicitly express our agreement to the various, they call it competencies drawn up by them. We believe these are in our interest. And why don't we share the burden of those underground leaders who have not the courage to tell that we have done this. So it's good, but they have not been able to spell it out. That this is the thing which we can do under the present prevailing contemporary situation. I think Naga people, we are politically conscious. We shall accept what is real. And we are not asking people to accept what is not real. Is it not the time? The Naga people, come forward, wake up, to see the reality of the situation in the country, in the world, in Nagaland. The younger generation, they have got the potentialities to survive, to work, to compete. But where is the space for them? No space. Why? Normalcy is not there. And we are living in a very confused governance. Since there are so many authorities, in Portugal, higher than the chief minister. Nagaland is the land of prime ministers, commander-in-chief, presidents, but elected government is, the highest one is only chief minister. So Portugal-wise, I think we have totally undermined the constitutional authority, and thereby we have made their main backbone. Because of today, it's very difficult to make out whether it is black or white, very difficult. And no one has got a courage that we are living in an abnormal situation. And therefore, appeal to the people of Nagaland as an old man on my own behalf, and convey to you that Naga people must wake up, see the reality, and march hand in hand with the rest of the people of the country, and we should make Nagaland as a model state. In this, I would like to urge upon the press fraternity to make yourself the messenger of truthfulness, the messengers of reality, and the messengers of unity among other people. As an old man, whatever I have said, I take the full responsibility, because I have nothing against anybody, but I love Naga people. And I hope God will open up the eyes and minds of Naga people, including the church leaders. With these few words, I want to thank you very much for inviting me to this great occasion. Thank you, Jai Hind, and God bless all of you. Thank you.